My name is Riley Kane. I'm 26 years old. And 2 weeks ago, I came home to find my old college roommate standing in my kitchen, wearing my favorite lounge set. Before I tell you how I moved them both from my beautiful San Francisco home into the gutter, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. The drive home from the airport had been quiet. A 2-day business trip to Seattle. A major pitch secured for my startup. And all I wanted was a hot shower and my own bed. I pulled into the driveway. My reliable old Tesla looked out of place next to the gleaming new Porsche Marcus had just leased. But there was another car. One I didn't recognize. A sporty little red Miata, parked with a casual arrogance that instantly set my teeth on edge. I chalked it up to one of Marcus's colleagues. He was always bringing people home from his venture capital firm without telling me. I grabbed my carry-on, the familiar weight of it comforting in my hand, and walked to the front door. The first thing that hit me was the smell. A cloyingly sweet perfume. The kind that tries too hard. It wasn't mine. My keys felt cold in my hand as I unlocked the door. The house was quiet, but it was a lived-in quiet. A designer purse slung over the back of my favorite armchair. A pair of impossibly high heels kicked off near the entryway. My blood turned to ice water. I walked slowly toward the kitchen, my footsteps silent on the hardwood floors I'd picked out myself. And then, I saw them. It was a perfect domestic scene. Marcus, sitting at our polished quartz island, the Financial Times spread before him. Coffee mug in hand. At the stove, with her back to me, a woman. Humming. Stirring something in my stainless steel skillet. And she was wearing my lounge set. The cozy cashmere one Marcus had given me on our first anniversary. The one I treasured. For a second, my brain refused to process it. It felt like a movie of someone else's life. Then she turned, and the movie became a nightmare. It was Mia, my old college roommate. Her humming stopped. The spatula clattered against the stove. Her eyes, wide, panicked for a split second, quickly hardened into something else. Something triumphant. Marcus looked up. His expression wasn't shock. It was annoyance. Like I was an interruption. "Riley," he said, setting his mug down with deliberate calm. "You're home early." My voice came out steady, even. It didn't feel like my own. My flight was changed. I set my bag on the floor. A soft thud, like a gunshot in the silence. Apparently, I'm not the only one who arrived ahead of schedule. Mia just stood there, clutching the lapels of my lounge set. The silence stretched. Thick, suffocating. The ticking clock on the wall, each second, a hammer blow against my heart. Marcus folded his newspaper. A gesture so practiced, so dismissive, it made my stomach turn. He stood, straightening the tie of his $1,000 suit. He looked like he was about to chair a board meeting, not shatter a marriage. "We need to talk," he said. And then, he launched into a speech. Rehearsed. Calculated. Every word chosen to inflict maximum damage with minimum fuss. He talked about how our marriage had been drifting. How he needed someone who understood his world. Someone with ambition. He said it all without a trace of emotion, as if he were discussing a quarterly earnings report. And then, he delivered the final blow. "Mia is moving in," he said. Not even looking at me, but at her. "I'm proposing a new arrangement. A civilized one. You have 2 options, Riley. Accept the situation and coexist. Or..." He finally turned his cold eyes on me. "You can leave with what you came into this marriage with. Which, as we both know from our prenup, is nothing." Nothing. The word echoed through the room. He had just erased 5 years of my life. My work. My sacrifices. And valued it. At nothing. I looked at Mia. She was smirking now. That smug little curl to her lips. She was savoring my humiliation. And yet, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The pain was still there. Hot. Sharp. Beneath my ribs. But it was being encased in ice. I thought about the house. This house, paid for in cash, through my startup. The cars in the driveway. Both leased under my business account. The investments. The savings. The entire life Marcus thought was his. All of it insulated. Protected. Owned by the little hobby he so often mocked. He expected tears. He expected screaming. He expected me to beg. I gave him none of it. I let the silence hang. A thick, heavy blanket of their arrogance. And my resolve. I looked at my husband, the man I had loved. Then at my old roommate, the girl I had tried to help. I took a slow, deliberate breath, tasting the bitter coffee, and the sweet promise of what was to come. But to understand that calm, you have to understand the years of weather that came before it. You have to go back. To the beginning. My real life, the life I remember, started the day I lost my mother. I stood there in my kitchen, the air thick with the weight of their betrayal. My heart was hammering, each beat a sharp stab of pain beneath my ribs. Marcus's words, his cold, calculated speech about our marriage being over, about Mia moving in, about me leaving with nothing, still hung in the room like a toxic fog. Mia's smirk, that smug curl of her lips, was burned into my mind. Her fingers clutching my cashmere lounge set, as if she'd already claimed my life. I could have screamed. I could have hurled the coffee mug still sitting on the counter. Let it shatter against the perfect quartz island they thought was theirs. I could have let the tears come, hot and messy, and begged for answers. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at Marcus, his $1,000 suit gleaming under the kitchen lights. And at Mia, standing there like she'd just won some grand prize. And I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there. Raw. Searing. But it was being wrapped in a layer of ice. Cold, unyielding. My voice, when it came, was steady. Almost too calm. Like it belonged to someone else. "All right, Marcus," I said, my words smooth as glass. "You've made your position clear. I'll be out. In 72 hours. Their reactions were almost comical. Marcus's brow furrowed. His confident posture faltering for a split second, like he'd been handed a script he hadn't rehearsed. Mia's smirk flickered. Her eyes narrowed, as if she suspected a trap but couldn't quite place it. They'd expected a storm. Tears. Rage. Maybe me collapsing into a heap of desperation. But I gave them nothing. Just that calm, deliberate sentence. Then I turned, carry-on still in hand, and walked out of the kitchen. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. Confused. Maybe even a little uneasy. They didn't know it yet, but they had just stepped into a game they couldn't win. As I climbed the stairs to my office, the one place in this house that was truly mine, I let my mind settle. The pain was still there, a hot coal in my chest. But it was being overtaken by something else. A clarity. A resolve. I thought about this house. The sleek modern loft in San Francisco's Mission District. Bought in cash through my startup, EcoTrack Solutions. I thought about the cars in the driveway, the Porsche Marcus loved to show off, the Miata Mia had been driving, both leased under my company's name. I thought about the bank accounts, the investments, the entire life Marcus thought he controlled. All of it carefully insulated. Protected. Owned by the little coding hobby he mocked so often. He thought he held all the cards. But he didn't even know the game we were playing. I closed the office door behind me. The soft click sounded louder than it should have in the quiet house. I set my bag down, the same carry-on I'd gripped so tightly when I walked in, and I stood there for a moment, letting the silence wrap around me. Downstairs, I could hear faint murmurs. Mia's voice, high and giddy. Marcus's low chuckle. They were already celebrating, thinking they'd won. But they didn't know me. Not really. They didn't know the years of grit. The quiet battles. The strength I'd built long before Marcus ever walked into my life. They didn't know about the startup that was my empire. The one I coded line by line in dorm rooms and coffee shops. The one that had quietly grown into a multi-million-dollar machine, while Marcus dismissed it as a cute side project. They didn't know about the fire I'd kept banked, waiting for the right moment to burn. To understand why I didn't break in that kitchen, why I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble, you have to go back to the beginning. You have to understand the years that shaped me, the losses that hardened me, the betrayals that taught me to always have a backup plan. My real life, the one that made me who I am, started the day I lost my mother. It was the day I learned that love can break you, but it can also build you into something unbreakable. My real life, the one that shaped the woman standing in that kitchen, began the day I lost my mother. I was 8 years old, a skinny kid with messy braids, living in a small house in Portland, Oregon, where the air always smelled faintly of rain and pine. My mother, Lily, was my world. She was an artist, not the kind who sold paintings for millions, but the kind who could make a blank canvas feel like it held the whole universe. Her hands were always smudged with charcoal or paint. She'd sit me on her lap, showing me how to blend colors, until they sang. She'd laugh, her voice warm like summer light, and tell me, "Riley, you can create anything, if you see it in your heart first." That was her magic. She made me believe I could build worlds. But then, a sickness came. Quiet, cruel, like a shadow creeping across a canvas. It was cancer. Fast, unforgiving. One day she was sketching stars on my notebook. The next, she was gone. The world turned gray. The colors drained out. And our little house felt too big, too empty, without her laughter to fill it. I remember the funeral. Standing in a scratchy black dress, clutching my father's hand. He was a quiet man, a math teacher who loved numbers the way Mom loved colors. His grief was heavy, so heavy it pulled his shoulders down. But he never let go of my hand. "We'll get through this, Riley," he'd whisper, his voice cracking like old wood. "Together." And we did, for a while. For 2 years it was just us. 2 survivors in a lifeboat, drifting through a sea of loss. We'd eat cereal for dinner on nights he forgot to cook. He'd tell me stories about Mom, how she once painted an entire mural on their apartment wall, how she'd dance in the kitchen to old jazz records. Those stories were my lifeline. They kept her close, even as the pain of her absence carved itself deeper into my heart. He taught me to be strong, to keep going. But I think I taught him something too, how to smile again, even if it was just a little. I can still see our old living room. The worn couch where we'd sit together. The faint smell of Mom's lavender candles lingering in the air. I'd play with her old sketchbooks, tracing her pencil lines, feeling like she was still there, guiding my fingers. That's where my love for creating began. Not just art, but systems, patterns, code. Mom's creativity lived in me, but I expressed it through logic. Through the clean lines of computer programs I started tinkering with, on our ancient desktop. I'd spend hours making little games, watching the screen come alive with my ideas, feeling like I was building something she'd be proud of. It was my way of keeping her with me, of turning grief into something that could grow. But life doesn't stay still. When I was 10, my father met Sarah, a kind but reserved woman from his book club. She was nice enough, with a soft voice and a habit of bringing us homemade cookies. But she wasn't Mom. She filled the house with chatter, not color. And I didn't know how to connect with her. They married a year later. And our little lifeboat got a bit more crowded. Sarah tried, I'll give her that. But there was always a distance, like we were speaking different languages. I wanted my mother's warmth, her spark. But Sarah was more like a beige sweater. Comfortable, practical, not vibrant. I didn't resent her. Not really. But I missed the world Mom had built for us. By the time I got to college at Stanford, I was ready to build my own world. That's where I met Mia, my freshman roommate, the shadow in my story. I can still picture her moving into our dorm, blonde curls bouncing, her smile bright enough to light up the room. She was all energy, all charm, the kind of person who could talk her way into anything. We hit it off at first. She'd drag me to late-night coffee runs, laughing about boys and classes. And I thought I'd found a sister, someone to fill the gap Mom left behind. But there was a tension, subtle at first, like a crack in a window you don't notice, until it shatters. Mia had a way of watching me, her blue eyes sharp, like she was measuring every step I took. When I'd stay up coding, building apps for class projects, she'd lean over my shoulder and say, "Wow, Riley, you're such a nerd." Her voice sweet, but edged with something I couldn't name. It was like she wanted to be me, and beat me, at the same time. I didn't see it clearly then. But those early days with Mia set the stage for everything that followed. The kitchen scene. Marcus's cold words. Mia's triumphant smirk. They weren't just a betrayal. They were the final act of a play that started years ago. In a cramped dorm room, where I tried to build a family, and never saw the fault lines forming beneath my feet. The tension with Mia started small, like a glitch in a code you ignore, until it crashes the whole system. She was a year younger than me. All bouncing blonde curls. Wide blue eyes. Eyes that knew exactly how to get what she wanted. From the very beginning, there was a strange undercurrent. A subtle friction I tried to brush off, as nothing more than roommate quirks. Our dorm room was tiny. 2 twin beds pushed against opposite walls. Posters of bands and tech conferences taped up haphazardly. The air always smelling faintly of instant ramen and coffee. Sarah, my stepmom, doted on Mia whenever she visited, praising her every little thing, like how she organized her closet or aced a pop quiz, as if Mia had just invented the wheel. My dad, still fiercely protective of Mom's memory, treated me with a quiet, deep love, the kind that felt like a secret anchor. He'd slip me extra cash for coding books, or Mom's old sketchpads, things that connected me to her creative spirit. Sarah gave me a new clothes. Endless encouragement. We were sharing the same space, but living in parallel worlds. And that gap bred something dark. The jealousy surfaced in little ways at first. Sophomore year, I was building an app for a hackathon. A simple eco-tracker, designed to monitor carbon footprints. Inspired by Mom's love for the planet. I spent weeks on it. Coding late into the night, my laptop screen glowing in the darkroom, while Mia chatted on her phone or painted her nails. The night before the event, Mia, accidentally, tripped while carrying a mug of coffee. It spilled right over my keyboard. The liquid seeped in, frying the circuits. My project files glitched, beyond repair. She burst into tears, apologizing profusely. Her voice high, trembling. "Oh my God, Riley, I'm so sorry. I didn't see your cord there." Sarah, who happened to be visiting that weekend, rushed to comfort her, shooting me a look that said, "How could you leave your laptop in such a precarious spot?" My dad spent the whole night helping me salvage what I could on a borrowed computer. But it was never the same. Glitchy. Incomplete. Mia ended up getting a participation shout-out. For a basic presentation she threw together at the last minute, something copied from an online tutorial. I got an honorable mention for my patched-together app. And as I stood in that crowded auditorium, buzzing with excited students, the smell of stale pizza lingering from the event snacks, I caught Mia across the room. She wasn't looking at her certificate. She was looking at me. And for a split second, her eyes flashed with pure, unfiltered satisfaction. A smirk tugged at her lips, before she masked it with a sympathetic smile. It was like she'd won something bigger than the hackathon. That pattern repeated itself through our college years. If I got an A on a tough algorithms exam, she'd complain loudly in the dorm, her voice carrying down the hall. The professor totally plays favorites with Riley. She's always in office hours. If I landed a spot in a prestigious coding club, she'd suddenly develop a mysterious wrist injury from overstudying, requiring everyone's attention. Friends bringing her food. Sarah calling daily to check in. She was a magnet for sympathy, pulling it in like a black hole. And her favorite target was anything that made me shine. My dad saw it. He'd pull me aside during visits, his hand on my shoulder, eyes serious behind his glasses. You have your mother's spirit, Riley. Don't ever let anyone dim your light. But I wanted connection. The kind of easy bond one saw in other roommates. Late night talks. Shared secrets. So I tried. I helped Mia debug her projects, even when she barely thanked me. I covered for her when she skipped class for parties. I pretended not to notice the way she flirted with my study group friends. I was trying to build a bridge to a roommate who was secretly lighting matches on her side of the shore. Looking back, those small acts weren't accidents. They were tests. Probes. To see how much she could take without me pushing back. The spilled coffee wasn't just a mess. It was a strike at my dreams. Echoed in every complaint. Every fake injury. It built a quiet resentment in me. One I buried deep. But it was there. Simmering. Waiting for the day it would boil over. And in that kitchen years later, with Mia in my lounge set, and Marcus at her side, it all came rushing back. The smirks. The sabotages. The unspoken envy that had poisoned our so-called friendship from the very start. Despite the cracks I saw in Mia, those early warning signs of her envy, I kept trying to build something with her. Something like the family I'd lost. When Mom died, I wanted a sister. Or at least the kind of bond one saw in other girls' friendships. Late night talks over pizza, shared secrets, the kind of closeness that made college feel less lonely. Our dorm room, with its mismatched bedspreads and the faint hum of my laptop fan, became my testing ground for that dream. I'd sit cross-legged on my bed, helping Mia with her coding assignments, patiently explaining loops and functions, while she sighed dramatically, tossing her blonde curls. Ugh, Riley, you make this look so easy. Her tone was always just sweet enough to mask the edge. But I felt it. A little jab, hidden in her gratitude. I'd smile. Brush it off. Tell myself she didn't mean anything by it. I wanted to believe we could be close. That I could build a bridge across the gap between us. I went out of my way to make it work. When Mia wanted to sneak out to frat parties, I'd cover for her, telling our RA she was studying late in the library. I'd lend her my notes when she skipped classes, even though I knew she'd spent the night scrolling through social media instead. I ignored the way she'd linger around my study group, batting her eyes at the guys I liked. Her laugh a little too loud. Her hand brushing their arms a little too often. Once, I caught her trying on my favorite jacket, the one Mom had given me before she got sick. She was standing in front of our dorm mirror, twirling, like it was hers. "Oh, Riley, I didn't know you were back," she said, her voice all innocence. But her eyes held that same sharp glint I'd seen at the hackathon. I told myself it was nothing. Just Mia being Mia. Carefree and a little thoughtless. But deep down, my gut was whispering, warning me, that every step I took toward her was a step onto unsteady ground. My dad saw it clearer than I did. During one of his visits, we grabbed coffee at a little campus cafe. The air thick with the smell of roasted beans, and the chatter of students. He stirred his black coffee, his brow creased, and said, "Riley, you've got your mother's heart. But don't let it blind you. Some people see your light, and want to steal it." His voice was soft but firm. His eyes searching mine, like he was trying to pass on a lesson I wasn't ready to hear. I nodded, sipped my latte, the foam sticking to my lip, and promised I'd be careful. But I didn't want to believe him. I wanted a family, a connection to replace the one I'd lost. So I kept trying with Mia. Kept ignoring the way her compliments always felt like they had claws. Kept telling myself I could win her over with kindness. Looking back, I see how naive I was. Thinking I could build a bridge to someone who was already burning it from the other side. Every time I helped her, every time I let her slide, I was handing her pieces of myself, thinking they'd add up to something warm, something real. Instead, they were kindling for her envy, fuel for the fire she'd light years later. In my kitchen, that moment with Marcus and Mia, their smug faces staring at me, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was the culmination of all those years I spent trying to make her my sister, not seeing that she was only ever waiting for her chance to take what was mine. I wanted a family so badly that I ignored the truth. Mia didn't want to share my world. She wanted to steal it. And standing in my office now, the echo of their laughter downstairs still ringing in my ears, I realized I'd been building that bridge, alone, all along. I wanted a family so badly that I ignored the truth about Mia, the way her envy had been smoldering beneath her smiles, all along. But in my final year at Stanford, when the weight of college and the ache of Mom's absence still lingered, I met Marcus. And for a while, I thought I'd found the kind of love that could anchor me. He was a grad student in business, tall, confident, with a sharp smile, and a way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We met at a tech mixer in Palo Alto, the kind of event where startup hopefuls and venture capitalists mingled over cheap wine and artisanal apps. The room buzzed with ambition, the air thick with the scent of espresso and new money. I was pitching my eco-tracking app, EcoTrack Solutions, a side project I'd started in my dorm to monitor personal carbon footprints. Most people nodded politely, but Marcus leaned in, his dark eyes locked on mine, and said, "Riley, this is brilliant. You're going to change how people think about sustainability." His voice was warm, certain, like he could see the future I was coding. For the first time since Mom, someone saw my potential not as a threat, but as a spark to be fanned. We started dating. And Marcus was my biggest cheerleader. He'd show up at my coding marathons with takeout from my favorite taco truck, cheering when I debugged a tricky algorithm. He called my app the future. Said I was building something that could shift the world. And I fell hard. Not just for his charm, but for the way he made me feel like my dreams mattered. 2 years later, we got married. In a beautiful ceremony in Napa Valley. The kind of place where the air smells of grapevines and possibility. The venue was a hillside winery. Golden sunlight filtering through oak trees. Fairy lights twinkling as the evening settled in. My dad walked me down the aisle, his eyes misty as he whispered, "Your mom would be so proud, Riley." I wore a simple lace dress, my mother's pearl earrings glinting in my ears, and I felt like I was stepping into a new chapter. One where love and ambition could coexist. But even in that perfect moment, there was a shadow. Mia was there. A bridesmaid in a pale green dress that hugged her curves. Her blonde curls pinned up. Her smile wide for the cameras. She laughed and danced, charming everyone. But when I caught her eye during the toasts, her gaze was different. It wasn't joy. It wasn't sisterly warmth. It was cold. Sharp, calculating, like a predator, sizing up its prey. I stood at the altar, Marcus's hand warm in mine, and I saw her, watching me from the crowd, her eyes fixed with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. It was the same look I'd seen at the hackathon years before, that fleeting smirk of satisfaction, when she ruined my laptop, magnified 100 times. My heart stuttered. A cold premonition I dismissed as wedding day nerves. I told myself it was nothing. Just Mia being Mia. Always a little dramatic. I wanted to believe in the family I was building. In the life Marcus and I were starting. Looking back, that shiver was my intuition screaming. warning me that the greatest threat to my happiness wasn't some abstract challenge. It was standing right there, smiling in my wedding photos. Her eyes already plotting to take what I'd built. I should have listened to that feeling, to the quiet voice that had been whispering since college. Instead, I smiled back, raised my glass, and let the moment pass, not knowing that Mia's envy was a fire that would burn its way into my home, my marriage, my life. That chilling look from Mia at my wedding should have been a warning, a red flag flashing in the Napa Valley sunlight. But I pushed it aside, clinging to the hope of a new life with Marcus. After the wedding, our world seemed to accelerate. Marcus's career took off like a rocket. He was a rising star at his venture capital firm in San Francisco, a shark in a tailored suit, closing multi-million-dollar deals with tech startups. The office, all glass and steel in the heart of the financial district, smelled of ambition and expensive cologne. And Marcus thrived there, his confidence practically radiating. I'd visit him sometimes, bringing coffee to his sleek corner office, the city skyline glittering behind him. And he'd flash that charming smile saying, "Riley, you're my good luck charm." But slowly, subtly, his tone began to shift. My startup, EcoTrack Solutions, which he'd once called brilliant, became his punching bag. He'd come home from a long day, toss his keys on the counter, and smirk. "How's your little coding hobby going, babe?" The words stung, each one a tiny cut. But I'd laugh it off, tell myself he was just tired, just joking. My work was quieter, more organic, building partnerships with local green businesses, then regional chains. But it was growing, hitting 6 figures in revenue, while Marcus thought I was just playing with apps. Meanwhile, Mia was floundering. She'd graduated with a marketing degree, but couldn't hold a job. She bounced between startups, social media gigs, event planning, even a brief stint at a juice bar. Always quitting, or getting fired. Always complaining that her bosses didn't get her vision. I'd hear her voice over the phone with Sarah, her tone sharp, whiny. "They're all idiots, Mom. They don't appreciate me." And Sarah would coo back, soothing her, "You're too talented for them, sweetie." It was the same dynamic from college. Mia failing, Sarah excusing it, and me feeling the unspoken pressure to fix it. That pressure came to a head one Sunday, at a tense family dinner in our loft. The air heavy with the scent of roasted chicken. The undercurrent of old resentments. My dad, Sarah, Mia, Marcus, and I sat around our dining table. The one I'd picked out for its reclaimed wood, a nod to Mom's love for sustainability. Mia was sulking, picking at her plate, fresh off being let go from another marketing job. Sarah looked at me, her eyes pleading yet pointed, and said, "Riley, Marcus works at that big fancy firm. Surely he could find something for Mia to do. Just a little role, to get her started." My stomach twisted. That old, familiar knot of obligation tightening. I didn't want to do it. A voice in my head screamed, "Don't bring her closer. She's already too close." But I looked at my dad. His face lined with the exhaustion of keeping peace between us all. His eyes silently asking me to try, and for his sake. I swallowed my unease. That night, alone in our bedroom, the city lights casting shadows on the walls, I brought it up to Marcus. I sat on the edge of our bed, the comforter soft under my fingers, and said, "Marcus, Mia's looking for a job. Is there maybe an entry-level analyst role at your firm? She's smart, she just needs a chance." He scoffed, swirling the whiskey in his glass, the ice clinking softly. "Riley, we're a top-tier firm, not a charity. We hire Ivy League MBAs, not whatever Mia is." His arrogance grated, but I knew how to play him. I leaned forward, my voice steady. I know. But think about it. You could mentor her. Shape her. She admires you so much. It'd look good on you, turning raw talent into a star. I saw the spark in his eyes. His ego flaring at the idea of being a kingmaker. He stroked his chin. A slow grin spreading. All right, he said, his tone magnanimous. I'll see what I can do. But she reports to me. I'll keep her on a tight leash. 2 weeks later, Mia started at his firm. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Like I'd finally done something right. Eased the tension that always hung over our family gatherings. I thought I'd built that bridge I'd been chasing since college. A way to make us all closer. I stood in my kitchen that night, chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife's rhythmic thud against the cutting board grounding me. And I told myself, I'd helped Mia. Helped my dad. Helped us all. But I was wrong. I hadn't built a bridge. I'd opened a gate. And I'd personally invited the wolf into my home. I thought I'd done the right thing. Bringing Mia into Marcus's firm. Believing I'd built a bridge. To ease the tension that had always simmered between us. But the moment she started working there, everything changed. Like a program I'd written suddenly spitting out errors I couldn't debug. It was subtle at first. But the shift was unmistakable. Marcus and Mia became a unit. A closed circuit I wasn't part of. They'd come home from the office together, laughing about some inside joke from a meeting. Their voices echoing through our loft. As I worked alone in my home office. The faint hum of my computer fan. The only sound keeping me company. The San Francisco skyline glittered outside my window. But inside, the air felt heavy. Charged with something I couldn't name. Dinners turned into performances of their work lives. Marcus would lean back in his chair at our reclaimed wood dining table. A glass of Napa Valley Cabernet in hand. And say, Mia absolutely crushed it in the pitch today. She's got a killer instinct. Mia would blush. Her blonde curls catching the light. And murmur, I learned from the best. They were a team. And I was the audience. Sitting there with my plate of pasta, the fork cold in my hand, feeling like an outsider in my own home. Marcus's mockery of my work grew sharper, more deliberate. My startup, EcoTrack Solutions, was no longer just a hobby to him. It was a punchline. He'd walk into my office, see my screens filled with code and data visualizations, and chuckle. Still playing with your cute little apps, Riley? His tone was patronizing. Like I was a kid building a lemonade stand. While he was out making real money. What he didn't know, what I never told him, was that EcoTrack was quietly hitting 7 figures in revenue. I'd landed contracts with major green tech firms. My app tracking carbon footprints for businesses across the West Coast. But I kept it under wraps. Funneling every major asset through the company. The loft we lived in. The Porsche he drove. The savings he thought were his. I'd learned from my mother's past. From the way her first husband had left her with nothing after a messy divorce. She told me, her voice soft but fierce as she sketched in our Portland living room. Riley, always protect what's yours. Don't trust anyone with everything. So I did. Legally, I was the CEO of a thriving startup funding our lifestyle. In Marcus's eyes, I was just a coder with a quirky side project. The signs of their affair crept in like bugs in a codebase. Small, but impossible to ignore once you saw them. Marcus started guarding his phone like it held nuclear codes. Angling it away when I walked by, his thumb quick to lock the screen. He'd take business trips with Mia. Coming back with stories about client dinners that sounded too cozy. Too intimate. Once, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. Dinner for 2 at a candlelit restaurant in Seattle. With a bottle of wine I knew he'd never order for a client. I stood there in our walk-in closet. The paper trembling in my hand. The faint smell of his cologne clinging to the fabric. And felt a knot tighten in my chest. Then came the photos. I was searching our shared cloud drive for a contract when I stumbled on a folder from a work conference in Portland. Pictures of them laughing at a rooftop bar. Marcus's arms slung around Mia's shoulders. Her wearing his blazer over her dress. Her smile sharp, triumphant. And then, one photo. A selfie in what looked like a hotel room. Mia's head tilted against his. Her eyes glinting with something that wasn't just professional admiration. I didn't confront them. Not yet. But standing in my office, the city lights casting long shadows across my desk, I felt the truth settle over me like a cold fog. Every slight, every late night, every shared glance I dismissed. It all clicked into place. They weren't just colleagues. They were rewriting my life. And I'd handed them the pen. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a declaration of war. And I wasn't going to let them win. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a declaration of war. One that had been brewing, in the shadows of late nights and guarded phones. And it finally came into sharp, horrifying focus, about a year ago. I was in my home office. The San Francisco fog pressing against the windows like a veil. Searching our shared cloud drive for a vendor contract. My fingers flew across the keyboard. The soft clicks echoing in the quiet room. And then, I clicked into a mislabeled folder. Conference notes. What I found wasn't spreadsheets. It wasn't memos. It was photos. Photos from a business trip to Seattle. Marcus and Mia, at a dimly lit jazz club. His arm around her. Their heads close. Laughing. Like they shared the world's best secret. And then, the one that hit like a gut punch. A selfie. In a hotel room. Mia lounging on the bed. In Marcus's button-down shirt. Unbuttoned just enough to show lace underneath. Her smirk triumphant. Her eyes gleaming with victory. His shirt. Their lie. My life. My world didn't shatter. It snapped into clarity. Every pixel aligning in a way that made my blood run cold. The inside jokes. The late nights. The sharpened mockery. It all made sense. I hadn't just been betrayed. I had engineered my own downfall. By handing Mia the keys to my kingdom. I sat there, staring at the screen. The glow casting harsh shadows on my face. My hands trembling on the mouse. For a moment, the pain was overwhelming. A hot wave crashing over me. But then, something colder took hold. I wasn't going to be the victim. I closed the folder, deleted my browsing history, and made a choice. No confrontation. What good would that do? They'd deny it. Gaslight me. Call me paranoid. Jealous. I'd seen it happen to friends in bad marriages. Watched them doubt their own eyes. No. I'd learned from Mom's stories of her first divorce. You don't charge into battle without weapons. So I started gathering mine. I named it Operation Shadow. A nod to the hidden code layers in my apps. The unseen algorithms that tracked everything without being noticed. My home office became my war room. I cleared a corner desk, the wood cool under my palms, and set up a new encrypted folder on a private drive Marcus didn't know about. I began documenting it all, methodically, like debugging a complex program. Every late-night meeting, every weekend retreat they took together. I logged the dates, cross-referenced calendars. I set up discrete alerts on our joint credit card, forwarding copies of receipts to a burner email. Flowers for his star analyst. A necklace from Tiffany's. Lingerie from a boutique I'd never shopped at. The evidence piled up. A digital monument to their deceit. Each item, a line of code in my growing script of revenge. I worked late into the nights. The city's hum fading outside, fueled by black coffee, and a quiet fury that kept the pain at bay. As I built my case, their cruelty escalated. shifting from subtle digs to outright sabotage, like they sensed the tide turning and wanted to crush me first. The first major strike came about 6 months ago. I was finalizing a huge pitch for a national sustainability firm. A game changer. The deal that would put EcoTrack on the map. The deck was saved on our shared drive. Clearly labeled, EcoTrack pitch, do not delete. I'd spent 3 years building to this. My fingers aching from endless revisions. The presentation was set for a video call at 9 a.m. the next day. That night, Marcus came home late, reeking of Mia's perfume. Smug satisfaction on his face. His mood foul after some office drama. The next morning, I sat at my desk with my coffee, steam curling up like a warning, and opened the drive. The folder was gone. Vanished. Panic iced my veins. I searched the trash, the archives, every corner. Permanently deleted. I rushed downstairs, my robe flapping, my heart pounding. Marcus was at the kitchen island, sipping his espresso, the picture of calm. "Marcus," I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts. "My EcoTrack pitch folder, it's gone." He looked up, feigning mild surprise, his brow arching just so. "Oh, that's odd. I was cleaning up the drive last night. It was cluttered with junk. Might have deleted it by mistake. Sorry, babe." He shrugged, turned back to his tablet. "Didn't think your cute app files were that big a deal." The lie was blatant, cruel, designed to belittle me, to keep me small. He knew how important it was. I'd mentioned it over dinner. This wasn't an accident. It was war. Rage boiled up. Hot. Fierce. My fists clenching at my sides. For a split second, I wanted to hurl my mug at him. Watch it shatter like my trust. But I didn't. I turned. Walked back upstairs. My steps measured. I had backups. Always had backups. On a separate drive. I rebuilt the deck in 3 frantic hours. Fingers flying. Fueled by fury and determination. And I nailed the pitch. Landed the contract. When I told Marcus that night, his shock was poorly hidden. A flicker of disappointment crossing his face. And in that moment, I knew. I was at war with my own husband. And Operation Shadow was my only way out. The war wasn't silent anymore. It was escalating. Their attacks growing bolder. As if they could smell my resolve, but didn't know its source. The second major blow was more public, more humiliating. And it came from Mia. Marcus's firm was hosting its annual charity gala. A glittering affair in a downtown San Francisco ballroom. All crystal chandeliers and tuxedos. The air thick with the scent of champagne. And ambition. I was expected to attend. To play the dutiful wife. Smiling through the small talk. I hated these events. The way they reduced people to networking pawns. But I went. Slipping into a sleek black dress. My mother's pearl earrings. My quiet talisman. I was standing by the silent auction table. Browsing art pieces that reminded me of Mom's sketches. When they approached, Mia clung to Marcus's arm. Stunning in a plunging red gown. One that screamed desperation. And expense. She looked me up and down. Her smile saccharine. And in a voice loud enough for the cluster of colleagues nearby to hear, she said, "Oh, Marcus, darling. Isn't this your wife? Riley, right? It's so nice to finally chat properly. Marcus says you tinker with apps or something. How sweet. To have a little hobby while the grown-ups handle the real work." The words landed like a slap, painting me as a frivolous accessory. A nobody. In their high-stakes world. Laughter rippled through the group. Polite but cutting. My face burned. Heat crawling up my neck. Marcus just stood there. A smug grin tugging at his lips. enjoying the spectacle. His hand resting possessively on Mia's back. I looked at her. At that perfectly made-up face. At those cold, empty eyes. And I felt a flicker of pity. Amid the rage. She was pouring out venom. Just to steal a life she couldn't create herself. I forced a polite smile. My voice steady as steel. Tech innovation is fascinating, Mia. You might try it sometime. It teaches you that the strongest systems are built on solid code. Unbreakable. No matter what tries to crash them. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Confusion flashing in her eyes. She didn't get the jab. But she felt the edge. They walked away. Mia's laugh a little too forced. And I stood there. Heart hammering. The ballroom's chatter fading to a dull roar. That night, driving home through the foggy streets. The city lights blurring like tears I refused to shed. I knew the silent war was turning loud. Back in my office. The desk lamp casting a warm glow on my screens. I called the one ally I needed. Eleanor Vance. The top corporate litigation attorney in San Francisco. I didn't spill everything. Not yet. I just said, Eleanor, I need to restructure my assets for maximum protection. Let's fortify EcoTrack's holdings. Her voice on the line was crisp. No nonsense. Understood. Riley. We'll build walls they can't breach. It was my first real move in Operation Shadow. Turning my resolve into action. The sabotage with the deleted files was still fresh. But I'd rebuilt from backups. Landed that massive contract. I'd watched Marcus's disappointment. Like a confirmation of his guilt. And now with Eleanor on board, I felt the shift. I wasn't just surviving. I was strategizing. A general, laying traps in code and law. So when I stood in that kitchen 2 weeks ago, facing their smug faces, I wasn't a heartbroken wife. I was the architect of their downfall. My comm wasn't shock. It was supreme control. Operation Shadow was primed. And they had walked right into it. I was a general now. My strategy locked in. My resolve, a steel cage around the pane. Standing in my office, the city lights flickering through the fog. I had become the architect of their downfall. And Operation Shadow was about to unfold. After telling Marcus and Mia I'd leave in 72 hours. I didn't waste a second. I called Eleanor Vance, my lawyer. Her voice sharp and steady over the phone. Like a blade honed for battle. Eleanor, I said, my voice low, the hum of my computer in the background. Freeze Marcus's accounts. Everything, bank, credit cards, investments. And prepare eviction notices. The house, the cars, they're all under EcoTrack's name. She didn't hesitate. Her response crisp. Consider it done, Riley. I'll have the papers ready by morning. I hung up. My fingers tracing the edge of my desk. The wood cool and solid, grounding me. As I heard their laughter drifting up from the kitchen. They thought they'd won. Their voices light, carefree, like they were already rewriting my life. Marcus's low chuckle. Mia's high-pitched giggle. It was a sound that could have broken me. But instead, it fueled me. I stood there, the city's pulse outside my window, and felt a quiet thrill. They had no idea what was coming. Over the next 2 days, I played my part, moving through the house like a ghost, packing small things to keep up the facade. Mia, emboldened, strutted around like she already owned the place, her heels clicking on my hardwood floors, her perfume lingering like an invasion. She'd sprawl on my couch, scrolling through her phone, tossing her blonde curls. And once, I caught her rifling through my jewelry box. She slipped on a necklace. Mom's delicate silver chain with the tiny star pendant. The one she wore when she taught me to sketch. "Oh, Riley, this is cute," Mia said, her voice dripping with condescension. holding it up to the light. You won't mind if I borrow it, right? Since you're leaving. My heart twisted. A sharp pang of loss. But I just nodded, my face a mask. Sure, Mia, I said softly, my hands clenching behind my back. Inside, I was screaming. But I let her keep it. Let her think she was winning. Because every step she took was a step deeper into my trap. The movers came on the second day, hired under the guise of clearing out office clutter. They packed up my servers, my extra monitors, the heart of EcoTrack's operations, while Marcus and Mia barely noticed. Too busy planning their victory. I overheard them in the living room. Mia's voice sharp with excitement. We should redo the kitchen. Make it brighter, you know. Marcus laughed. Anything you want, babe. The arrogance in their voices. The assumption that my life was theirs to claim. It was almost too perfect. Their blindness to the storm I'd prepared. I stood in my office, watching the movers load the last box. The air smelling faintly of cardboard and dust. And I felt a surge of power. Like I was writing the final lines of code. In a program they'd never understand. On the third morning, the doorbell rang. A sharp chime cutting through the house. I was upstairs, my packed carry-on by my side, when I heard Marcus's heavy steps to the door. I followed. My heart steady now. A metronome of control. Eleanor stood there. Impeccable in a tailored grey suit. Her briefcase in hand. A process server at her side. Marcus frowned. His brow creasing. What's this about? The server handed him the papers. His face blank. Professional. Mia appeared behind him. Still in my cashmere lounge set. Her eyes narrowing. Eleanor's voice was calm. Lethal. Marcus. Mia. You've been served. Eviction notices. This property, the cars in the driveway, and all associated assets, are owned by EcoTrack Solutions. Riley's company. Valued at over $8 million. You have no legal claim. You have 1 hour to vacate. The silence was deafening. The kind that swallows sound. And time. Marcus's face drained of color. His mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. What? He stammered, flipping through the papers, his hands shaking. This is our house. Mia's smirk vanished, replaced by raw panic. Her fingers clutching the necklace, Mom's necklace, like it could save her. Riley, what is this? She snapped, her voice shrill. But I saw the fear in her eyes. I stepped forward. My voice even. You thought EcoTrack was a hobby, Marcus. You thought I was nothing. But every brick of this life is mine. The house. The cars. The accounts you've been spending from. They're all mine. And now, you're out. Eleanor added, her tone cutting. Any attempt to contest this will be met with a lawsuit for fraud and embezzlement. I suggest you leave quietly. They argued. Their voices rising, overlapping in a desperate cacophony. Marcus shouted about the prenup. Mia shrieked about fairness. But it was over. They grabbed what they could. Clothes, phones, Mia's designer purse. And stumbled out. Defeated. The door slamming behind them. I stood in the entryway. The faint scent of Mia's perfume lingering. And I felt the weight lift. The house was mine again. But more importantly, so was my power. As Marcus and Mia stumbled out of my house, their arms loaded with hastily packed bags, the door slamming behind them, I stood in the entryway. The silence settled like dust after a storm. The faint scent of Mia's cloying perfume lingered, a final trace of their invasion. But the space felt like mine again. The victory was sharp, exhilarating, like the rush of debugging a perfect line of code. But beneath it, there was a quiet ache, a reminder of the life I thought I was building. I walked to the living room. my bare feet cool against the hardwood. And I sank onto the couch, Mom's silver star necklace back in my hand, reclaimed from Mia's things before she left. I traced its delicate edges, feeling her strength, her lessons, grounding me. The fallout was swift, merciless, and I watched it unfold, like a program executing exactly as planned. Marcus's world collapsed first. The scandal of the eviction spread through his firm like wildfire. Whispers of mismanagement, of living off his wife's assets while parading as a venture capital star. By the end of the week, he was fired. His name toxic in the tight-knit San Francisco tech scene. Mia was let go the same day. Her star analyst status crumbling when colleagues learned she'd been complicit in the deception. I heard through mutual contacts that they moved into a cramped one-bedroom in Oakland. Thin walls, flickering lights, a far cry from the loft they thought they'd stolen. Their relationship didn't survive the fall. The same contacts told me they fought constantly, their voices carrying through those cheap walls. Until Mia left, her dreams of grandeur shattered. I saw her once, months later, waiting tables at a dive bar. Her blonde curls tucked into a messy bun. Her eyes dull. No trace of the triumphant smirk she'd worn in my kitchen. Marcus faded into obscurity, taking a low-level sales job somewhere in the Midwest. They'd tried to erase me, but instead, they erased themselves. Meanwhile, EcoTrack Solutions soared. 6 months after the confrontation, we went public. The IPO valued at $23 million. I stood in my office, the same one where I'd planned Operation Shadow, watching the numbers climb on my screen. The soft hum of my computer a steady heartbeat. The San Francisco skyline sparkled outside. A city that had witnessed my fall and my rise. With the funds, I bought the building that once housed Marcus's old firm. A gleaming glass tower in the financial district. I turned it into a women's coding incubator, named Lily's Code, after my mother. A place where women could learn, build, protect their dreams, just as she'd taught me. Opening day was electric. Rows of laptops, young women laughing and coding, the air buzzing with possibility. I walked through the space, touched the walls, smelled the fresh paint, and I felt Mom's presence, her artist's heart beating in every line of code we wrote. Looking back, I see the truth I almost missed. Real power doesn't come from love or loyalty, not from bridges built to people who only want to burn them. It comes from building your own empire, brick by brick, code by code, and guarding it fiercely. The betrayal hurt. God, it hurt. But it also woke me up. I thought of my dad's words. Don't let anyone dim your light. And Mom's lessons about protecting what's yours. They were right. And I had learned the hard way. Standing in my reclaimed home, the city alive outside, I felt a quiet triumph. Not just over Marcus and Mia, but over the part of me that had been too trusting, too eager to please. I rebuilt. Stronger. Smarter. And I'm still building. So, I want to hear from you in the comments. What's your story of rebuilding after a setback? How did you find your strength? Drop a like if you felt this. Subscribe for more. And let's keep this conversation going. Because if I've learned anything, it's that our stories, our empires, are what keep us shining.